Welcome to the DevReady podcast, where we're helping non-techs build great tech. Today we're joined by Ronan. He is the founder of Intelligent Resourcing. I met him at Uncommon events and networking. He was running a business with a guy named Matt Murray that I was quite fond of, got to connect, learn a little bit about Ronan, some of his learning aspirations. He's certified innovation officer, as well as a guy that read 52 books last year and published a bit of learning about them, and that fascinated about his process about books. And then this year he started a process of intelligent resourcing and sharing socially how we can start a business. I wanted to bring Ronan on just to talk about learning and really evolving, because he's gone through many different iterations, and how we can evolve in a business and really change the way we think, shift, into different training as we get a bit into business. We can do day to day and just be consistent with that for 10 years and never really change. So Ronan will tell us a little bit about how we might learn and implement new things in our day-to-day business. Ronan, thank you for coming on. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for the great intro, Simon. Andrew. Happy to be here.
No, you're welcome. Ronan, for everyone out there, just and this podcast, for everyone listening, won't be really hugely tech focused, but I'm sure digging into some AI stuff, because Ronan's dabbling into that space as well. But it's really, for me, Ronan, who are you? Tell us a bit about yourself and for our listeners out there.
Well, I've pretty much had a non-career, an anti-career. I've just tried things. If I didn't like them, I've left. I've travelled the world, originally from the UK, worked on cruise ships for nearly a decade, lived in India, met my wife, and I've been in Australia 24 years. And I originally couldn't find an organisation I enjoyed working with, so I started my own business, put my life savings into something, and it went horribly wrong for a year. I'd spent everything and I'd made $600. So I turned over $600 and made $600. Oh, wow. And then someone showed me how to do SEO. This was 20 years ago. Mm-hmm. And that knowledge from someone else that said this is how you can optimize a website, but very early on, because in business you almost know nothing, and even when you know something, you still don't know everything. It's just evolving so fast. And so that sent me on 20 years of being an entrepreneur. Sold that business, tried a few different other things as well. And so I'm always looking, not necessarily for the next new thing, but I want to create something that has got significant value and isn't just another Me Too business.
Into that feeling, let's touch upon that, because we've all been there where we've been struggling in business. What's it like when you've made $600 of top line revenue in a year and put your life savings into something? Because I've been there in the early stages of business where you didn't make much money. You're thinking, what am I doing here? Let's for people that have never been involved in business, what's that feel like to be a part of something that's sort of, all right, where do I go? What do I do? You're sort of reaching and trying to figure out what's the best step, really.
Yeah, it's a little bit hard to explain if people haven't ever been in business. I would imagine the majority of your audience kind of are in business. And so, hats off to the people that put everything on the line, that follow, I hate to use the word passion, but follow an idea. Like, I really want to build, really want to make something, I really want to do something, other than just go and cash a paycheck each and every week. And there's an element in that of sometimes it's kind of ego, but sometimes it's that intrinsic motivation is that I'm really going to make this work. And so you push through your own comfort, what you don't know, and you just have to keep trying things until you hit that sweet spot of something that works for you. Mm. And if business was easy, everyone else would be doing it. You see a lot of hype and sales and marketing, the 7 secrets. There are no secrets. It's just stuff you don't know. And so that ties into my learning. I'm painfully aware, even after 20 years and 400 odd books in the last 7 years, that I still don't know so much about business. And so I'm keen to learn. And there's an intrinsic motivation that you can't teach somebody. It's either there or it's not.
What fascinates you about learning? What is that it sort of wakes you up in the morning to pick up another book? What is that piece? Are you looking for something? Are you just looking for a single idea? What drives you to pick up a book? Because not everyone can read that many books or does read that many books.
Well, for the first 7, 8 years in business, I didn't do anything. I'm going to say I got lucky, but you kind of make your own luck. I put quite a bit of effort out there. Met this woman, and her husband was the one who showed me the SEO. He said, "Come around to my house, and I'll show you how it works." And so he went above and beyond that kind of element of reciprocity. You and I have kind of touched on that as well. You know, the kind of Shane Taylor. Sometimes you just need someone to come in and sort of help you. But for about 7 years after that, I barely did anything. I didn't pay for any coaching. I didn't have any sort of mentors or advisors. He was the only one that would catch up now and again, but single domain expertise. And then I realized I was playing quite small. You bump up against what you don't know. You bump up against limiting beliefs. And there's that old phrase that, you know, some people haven't been in business 10 years. They've been in business 1 year and they've repeated it 10 times. And so they're not doing anything new. They're not innovating. They're not growing as a business owner, and therefore they wake up one day and all of a sudden their whole industry is gone because they didn't evolve and change. And so I've become fascinated. As I said, the more I learn, the more I realize I actually don't know. And so it becomes this self-fulfilling thing, is that I'm really interested in business. I'm really interested in ideas, the mindset, technical things, and that combination of all of those things means that there's always a new book to glean something out of and use it where possible into the business. Otherwise, it's just wasted.
I think, yeah, you can read something if you're not executing on it or trying at least one thing from something you're learning, then it is just, in a week it's gone, or in a day it's gone sometimes, because you don't really remember unless you execute or try something. So I would agree with that. When we caught up at an event, I think it was last year now, it would have been, or early this year, I lose track of time. You mentioned there's a process that you go through in terms of when you're reading business books. Can you give us a bit of a guidance on what that sort of looks like? Because maybe some people out there that might want to jump into some more reading but think they don't have the time, because time is just what we focus on and where we put our energy. But there was a process that you went through that sort of said, okay, there's a quicker way to read a book. They're all structured in similar formats. Dig into that for me. I'd love to share that with the audience.
Yeah, there's kind of a code of business books, why they're written, how they're written, and once you sort of know that code, you can kind of shortcut it. So first off, when you were gone to school and you would have been taught, or even before school by your parents, you read a book from cover to cover. You start at the front and you finish at the end. And if you don't like the book, you'll stop somewhere in the middle. Now, most business books are about 250 pages, which means if you're reading it at an average speed, it's going to take you around about 6 hours to read that book. So what I do is I come to the book with a plan of attack, ask it a couple of questions. What do I want to learn? Not necessarily what the author wants to teach me, because it could be two different things. Is there something that I can implement from this book almost immediately or very soon? And can I challenge maybe one of my assumptions or thinking? There's a couple of other questions as well, but they're the main things. Then I go straight to the back of the book and I look at the A to Z. And having read a lot of books, you can then start to go, Jeff Bezos. Oh, look, I've read several things about him that I can skip that bit. And I have a plan of attack. If I hear unusual phrases or interesting concepts, and it'll say this is on page 84. So on A4 sheet of paper, I'll write 84. We're talking about viral loops. Okay, that's interesting. Or we're talking about generative AI on page 87. So I'll write all those down, and then I'll start to read the book. I'm looking for, do I like the style of the author and the reader and how they're writing? And then secondly, what you'll find is that some books should only be about 50 pages, but they've padded it out. It's one simple concept or idea, and they'll give you case study after case study. But if I'm reading a particular concept and then they start sort of long-winded story, like, okay, I understand the concept. I don't need to read the next 4 or 5 pages. I'll just skim that. And so it gives me permission to get what I want out of the book, which means that quite quickly I might skim certain sections and go, that's not really interesting. Or if I'm really enjoying the book, I'll pretty much read it cover to cover. But I'm giving myself permission to get the maximum value out of the book without saying, I've got to read this cover to cover. And so that helps me often read a book in 3-4 hours.
Yeah, it would shift the mindset. And when you're looking I say this to my son. Okay. It's whatever we're looking for, we'll eventually find, right? So I said we're walking on a path, and he goes, "Oh, there might be a snake down here." I go, "Yeah, if we keep looking for one, I'm sure we'll find one. Eventually, you'll find one. If you never stop for the rest of your life, you will find one."
Yeah, as humans, we start looking for things, patterns, ideas, and everything, and then we find it, and then we can't unsee it. It's that cognitive bias of you buy a grey Mazda, and all you see are grey Mazdas everywhere. Yeah.
Correct. Yeah. So just that's a fascinating way to come in with asking questions, and I find that quite interesting, because then we'll look for an answer, and once we've got the answer, we feel like we've succeeded in getting an answer from the book, rather than reading it page to page and then, okay, what do I do with that? Sometimes you might read a book and not know what to do with it. Sometimes they put in that many things to do that people get sort of paralysed by, okay, where do I start? So I found that's quite an interesting way. What's the answer to the questions? Generally, it will be one thing usually. There could be a couple, but yeah, that gives you a nice little frame.
The cool thing about books, though, is that somebody who is often a domain expert has spent 20 years doing that. They've distilled that into 250 pages.
Yes.
And so why wouldn't you pick someone's brain for almost free, $15 for a book plus the time to sort of read that, where they're giving you ideas, concepts and everything that, if you're like me and not particularly smart, I left school at 16, I got no formal qualifications until recently when I got certified as a innovation officer and did the exam and put that work in. But it allows you to go, that's a great idea. I never would have thought on that, man. It's outside of my wheelhouse or my domain expertise, or I don't think I would ever join those dots. So, why wouldn't you read more books that's going to give you that competitive advantage and an understanding of fresh perspective, new ideas?
You've read a lot of books, clearly. Is there a couple you'd recommend for people that are in tech, that are looking to evolve a business? That you mentioned a couple of, you were reading some tech books earlier, but is there something that you're reading now, recently, that you'd recommend?
Look, I've read a couple of tech books very recently, and they're 7-8 years old, but they're now just coming into their tendency. So one of them talked about AI winter. So they have this kind of breakthrough in things like AI, and then everyone gets really excited and thinks robots are going to take over the world. And then it goes into a winter where there's this lag of reality has to catch up with the tech. And so the tech gets better and better and better. And then you finally reach that tipping point. So we are at that tipping point. But there's a downside for AI. There's absolutely, if you look at history, I believe that AI is a net destroyer of jobs. Unlike the internet 20 years ago, I believe that AI is going to destroy jobs. And so for me, I believe we're almost at the Industrial Revolution, or 100 years ago. I see a next pattern of a wave of jobs being destroyed with AI, and not easily replaceable. The internet had all sorts of people like devs, like yourself, people that would do websites, but also social media, funnel experts. All of these new jobs came out of the internet. And sure, jobs got destroyed. If you had a bricks and mortar business and things moved online, that business got disrupted. But a lot of people found jobs in technology and associated with the internet. I just can't see many jobs with AI. If an AI robot can replace 300 people in a call center, where are those jobs going? I've just not seen any, and I've spoken to a lot of people in AI. I've not seen anyone that's told me that there's going to be lots of new jobs for people that are actually using AI.
It's a tough one to understand what will happen in the next 3 to 5 years, because I agree there will be a lot of replacement of jobs. My gut feel, because that's all it is right now, is as humans we always look to do more. The reality is, even when I look at technology in the space, it's getting disrupted the space we're in considerably, and what we're able to do with AI is move faster, further, quicker than we could have done 2 years ago. That's the reality right now. We don't need as many people to design product anymore. We don't need as we still need the same amount of people to deliver and execute, but that's evolving. They're all using AI and empowered by AI. So I feel like we can do more. Now, at some point, potentially the robot will do the whole thing, but that's when it'll get a bit interesting as to what happens to all these jobs. That's, like you said, in call centres, that's already occurring. That can occur quite easily because you can actually pump these things in, you can have a conversation. Is that the world we want to be walking into? I'm not quite sure. It's a tough one, Ronan. I really have any answers either. But I figure
Yeah, because most people are telling you that what's going to be really important is your interpersonal skills and relationships and building those. But if you look at what our current economy is set up, we don't value those things. You know, we pay someone $20 an hour to work on a checkout or to do some of those customer facing things. We pay them far less than we do someone that can do tech or accounting or some of the more right-brain skills that AI is going to replace. And so unless there's a fundamental shift of valuing nurses, care assistants, your daycare people more, they're one of the lowest paid people in our economy. And so we don't value them. So until we do, those jobs that were replaced are going to end up being low-paid jobs.
some might think that higher paid jobs will be replaced. I think the disruption will come to the white collar. The reality is there's going to be a gap. So anyone that's been in industry for a long time has a subset of great knowledge and really can work with AI to get an outcome. If you're coming in very early at a graduate position, I feel like they're going to struggle because there's that gap of how do we guide and work with AI, and there'll be that lack of domain expertise, and then there might be a chasm of, over the next 10, 15 years, knowledge will be lost. And that's where I feel there could be a problem rather than that low paid personal touch. That's my sort of gut feel on this. If we look at what we've done as a race and as human beings, we've always, like I said, gone back to more. We can build skyscrapers now because of technology. When I look at what's happening in our space of technology, I feel like SMEs are going to have a leg up. They can do more with technology. They'll be able to customize whatever they want for their business and build things that enterprise could have done or they couldn't have done in the first place. So generally, we've gone down the world, we buy SaaS products. Potentially, you might be able to build your own product for a 20 grand investment in 3 to 5 years quite easily because we've got these tools and technologies around. So how does that change the game is quite fascinating to me.
I agree. I read a stat that economists estimate that 80% of wealth creation has come from adoption of technology. So if you are sat there and you might have a bricks and mortar business, you might have a technology business now, sort of old school. If you're not embracing the latest technology and dipping your toes in the water or getting involved in that, then you run the risk of being that 20%, not the 80%. And I'm talking the last 300-400 years, everything from telephones to the internet to all types of technology advancements. Cars, the whole thing, the people that leaned into that accumulated 80% of the wealth by adopting technology.
So if you're not adopting technology, you're in, especially in these moving times, we're in lots of trouble. And I think, as industries shift, and they're shifting a lot quicker than they did 20, 30 years ago as well, because of the technology leap. So there are people doing things that are quite extraordinary in the space of what they're doing with AI. Go out, do some research and really take a hold of it. How are you using AI in your business? Let's dig into that a little bit. Intelligent resourcing, how did it come about? What was the fascination for you to go out and start a different business again? And then also you've been doing this socially. So sharing how you're going day to day, why are you doing that? Sometimes people like to build in a closet, but these days building a closet doesn't really get you anywhere. So tell us a bit about intelligent resourcing and how that started firstly.
Well, intelligent resourcing evolved out of what I thought was quite obvious, and yet so many people weren't sort of leaning into that. So for close to a decade, I've been hiring out to the Philippines, and for probably about 7-8 years, I've been hiring pretty much direct, partly because most of the agencies put a 200% markup. And so as an Australian business owner, you think you're getting a bit of a bargain. It's $1,500 for someone to do some of your admin, some of the tasks that you don't like to do, which allows you to focus as the owner on more high value tasks. But them getting $500 and the agency getting $1,000 is a significant sort of arbitrage and markup. I've heard people call it kind of exploitatory. So the events and networking business that you have come along to, we employed 2 people at the start from that to help us to grow and scale, and it's how we were able to fill 5 events a week, high touch point. People say, look, you've got all these extra things in there. It's like, yeah, because my team out of the Philippines have implemented and following a process. And then last year I showed a business owner in Frankston how to do it, and he had a 35-person technology business, but everybody was onshore. And I showed him how to do it. He hired his first hire, second, third, fourth, fifth. So he hired 5-6 people within the space of 7-8 months for a couple of reasons. Number one is that he's getting a 7 to 10x on that return versus hiring locally. He's able to invest and upskill them as well. They're great workers, and he's got that nice blend now of offshore and onshore. You know, he hired a business analyst that's got 3 degrees, and he said, and I wanted to lean into AI and build a couple of prototypes and projects inside my business, but spending $130,000 on a full-time business analyst is a significant risk up front if you don't know what the outcome's going to be.
Yeah, very true. Yeah, definitely is.
So I could hire for a quarter of that. And so that's where intelligent resources comes in. And then we start looking at, let's empower them with the latest tools. So again, you don't need to understand technology to run a technology business per se. You know, if you're a great founder...
Well, you need to be able to understand what the outcomes of technology can be. You don't have to understand the black box. Yeah. You still need to understand how to get to an outcome.
Yeah.
So it's really what outcome we're striving for. How can we automate that? I think you take this, in my mind, take the technology out of it. It's understand the process first, and then how do we improve that process? Generally, it's with step improvement or throwing some technology in there to speed it up or automate it. That's how I see technology.
Yeah. And the same with AI. You don't need to code, or you don't really need to understand exactly how AI works. But empowering a team and leaning into it, this is where the learning and the books come in, enough to know that you speak to someone, they're not going to pull the wool over your eyes. That if you're speaking to, same with marketing, reading 4 or 5 marketing books when you're looking to hire someone from marketing, and then come in, you'll know enough to test them and find out whether they're, selling you a dud or they actually know their chops. And so intelligent resourcing is looking at everything you do. Can this be automated? Can this be delegated to someone else? Can I create a team that's going to empower me, which means that I'm not stuck doing the minutiae, and I've got a capable, well-functioning team that's doing the bits that I don't like to do, and I'm focusing on the key things, whether that's strategic growth, relationships, new ideas, all those other things. So many business owners just go, oh, I don't have time. And then you look and go, well, you're creating your own social media posts, you're invoicing people, you're doing all of this minutiae that someone else can do better, faster, cheaper, sometimes with AI, sometimes with humans, and that allows you to concentrate more on bringing in the revenue and the ideas that are really going to make the difference in your business.
Business is mostly sales and marketing, as it's been told to us many, many times, but that's a reality. If you're not in business, when we're especially growing and evolving, we need to be spending most of our time in sales and marketing, and that whole admin stuff just gets in the way. And the reality is it's a big cost if you're doing it as a founder or someone that's really in a big position within a small to medium enterprise, for sure. So the more you can get that out of your way, the better. And the more you can focus on what you do well, that's the priority, is when you're sitting in a founder's seat or in a business owner's seat. just do what you do well and let everyone else do the rest. That's a motto that I took on not that long ago. I've been in business for 16 years, but I've learned that over time.
You're a slow learner.
Yeah, slow learner. It's taken me a long time to let go of certain things.
100%, right? A lot of technical founders or people who have domain expertise don't want to be across sales and marketing or some of the other stuff they don't like, or website development. They just don't like to do it. And so what they tend to do is ignore it. But honestly, you can hire a marketing assistant with a degree out of the Philippines for $15,000 a year to give you that consistent marketing and pushing. Most marketing, especially junior marketers, all they're doing is following a recipe. And it's about consistency and getting out there. We think that by posting once every 2 weeks, I've done my work and my customers and prospects know all about me. No. Unfortunately, in this reality, you've got to consistently, like you're consistently creating a podcast, you've got to consistently do that. And so your other question was, why build in public? So I created 100 days, the first 100 days of a startup. What does that look like? One, to create the accountability. As business owners, we're great for saying, I could consistently do this. And as the owner, it's easy for you to move the goalposts. Easy to just go, I can't be bothered. Other things came in the way. And so there's an element of accountability, especially for small businesses, is they've got no accountability. There's no one to say, Andrew, you promised that you would put out 2 podcasts a week and now you've decided to stop doing that. Or where's the consistency of the things you're doing that you don't like to do? Sales, marketing, all of those things that most technical founders don't like to do. So the 100 days was also for me, you mentioned earlier about learning something and then not being able to implement it immediately and forgetting it. It was an exercise in digging back in and saying, actually, here's how I would start a new business and showing people in public, sales battle cards, ideal customer profile, empathy maps, all of these things that a lot of people in business have never ever done.
Yeah, not many touch upon them, that's for sure. They don't many go there. It's too far. All right, we'll just build something and sell it. That's a reality. What we see a lot in tech, that's 80% of people do.
Yeah, and so something like a sales battle card is just a simple way of you putting together a framework. So we're on a sales call specifically, you know how to handle objections because you've battled, scenarioed them out and you've got them there. You don't leave a meeting going, that was great for chat. You say, right, what's the next step? And so it's just a simple framework. But if you don't have it, you'll just wing it. And there are some natural salespeople and there are very few. Same with your whole marketing. It all comes with not your features and benefits, but what are the pain points and the problems that your customers are trying to solve? And so writing out an empathy map allows you to start to understand, all right, my ideal customer, this is what keeps them awake at night. This is the problem they're trying to solve. And so lead with that, not hey, we've got this really cool feature that you press this button, it does this and this. So what if it's not addressing the current pain point? And so that 100 days was about me trying a bit of a sprint. Can I get to profitability in 100 days? Can I showcase some of the things that I know and implement them myself and build that out in public with the accountability?
Plus the content sharing is a tick. So you're marketing your business, which is, and you see it, if you're posting once every 2 weeks, then you're not really doing anything. So you might as well not do any post at all. That's the reality of the amount of content that's getting thrown at us. We started this podcast 5 years ago because we were on the train of how do we build content in our business, and that's how it started. And there was 5 businesses came to us in the space of a couple of week period that had invested in technology, over $1 million of spend and nothing to show for it. And I had a chat to Anthony, my business partner. I said, surely we need, if we're such a small, at that time we had 7 or 8 people in our office in Essendon in Melbourne. And I thought, shit, if there's 5 businesses that have come to us in that space of time that have this problem, how big is this issue? So I went on that hunt on how big this issue is, and I did some research and that empathy of 86% of software projects fail. problem is the core problems over time of a budget wrong solution. Everyone loses sleep over this thing. They generally pick wrong teams. They get bad advice. Non-technical people really struggle with this area. But they're the domain experts that hold value and can transition to new technology. So understanding that has shifted the whole dynamic of our business. But content is always a fun thing to play with too. And I think the more we can leverage and put out, the better. That accountability piece, that little thumbprint on you, that's pushing down. We need that in business, and it was a good little tick for you. 100 days in business, and
otherwise just do all the easy things, and the easy things don't always move the dial. You might be genius zone. I'm great. I've built this program that does blah blah blah. I'm an expert at this. I've written a book, or I've done all of these things. But you haven't done the hard things you don't like to do, which actually move the dial.
Yeah, I agree. And the hard things generally require in my mind, sometimes spending a day or two outside of everything else and just putting yourself aside to work on that thinking, that strategizing, that writing the next deck, that sales piece that you said, that sales card, and that angle, and how might you have a bit of a strategy to handle objections.
So you asked me to recommend on the books. One of the books I recommend that is exactly that. One of my most favourite business books is The Road Less Stupid by Keith Cunningham.
Keith Cunningham, I do his thinking time. It's in my
one
of my techniques, which it's fascinating.
I love his phrase that we're all going to pay a dumb tax. It's just a question of how big.
Yeah.
So you can go off and build something without validating it and spend a couple of years, and then you launch it to market and people are like, I don't want that, because you haven't done your research and you've just decided that if I build it, people will come. It's everything. Every time you're going to spend some money in your business, you have to sort of, what's the second order consequences, because that's going to cost me time, money and effort. It's going to take me away from something else. And as you know, so it's a dumb tax. I love his other phrase as well, is that mistakes are inevitable, but learning is optional.
Keith, I met at a Tony Robbins Business Mastery event. So he's a very interesting character. Can light up a room full of jokes. He's hilarious to actually listen to. So I took his book and I've been implementing his thinking time over the years, in and out, but I've always done it. And it's a great place to just sit down and reflect. And if anyone wants to know what his strategy is, effectively you sit down and I've carved it down. I don't know if it's exact time frames, but I spent 30 minutes on a problem or a question or something that I'm working on, and you just write and you think. Sometimes we have more answers than we actually know in our mind. And we dig in and really just dig in and reflect. So you spend 30 minutes just free writing, and you spend the next 15, 20 minutes highlighting, get a couple of actions out of that, and then move on to action. I found that quite mind-blowing how quickly that can move you forward when you really invest in something like that, rather than even reading a book. It's amazing how much information we have in our head to find the right path forward. I do recommend that book too. Yeah, great book.
Yeah, because as humans, we're trying to jump to the shortcut. Our brains are hardwired to conserve energy. So, I know that, and you jump to the answer, here's the solution, without really drilling into that. But invaluable to spend that extra thinking time.
Yeah, as in business, we need to strategize, and I feel like that is a good strategy moment for me. So I do that every week or fortnight. I will jump into thinking time. So it's something that I have done for a long time. So. And
I think one of the other most valuable points of a business is start to create standard operating procedures, systems, processes. Download your IP into something that is followable, because almost every system can be followed by somebody else. So everyone goes, I'm the creative genius, or I'm the only one who can do this, or what have you. But there's going to be huge elements of what you do each day and every day that if you've created a system and a process, someone else can kind of follow that. So that 100 days, I and the team created a process that I would record a 5-minute video, and then they would download it, use a transcription, put into ChatGPT, follow certain prompts about my languaging, and then spit out the content. And so I had very little involvement in that. Sure, I've taken the 400 odd books and some of the ideas and able to then put that into a 5-minute video. But the team then produced that content, which allowed me to create that kind of consistency again and again and again.
See, this podcast that we're on right now, we will record this, Ronan, and then this will go off to the team. They will produce a blog article out of it, a number of posts out of it, and that will get put on socials without me touching anything anymore. And that's not because of me. I'm not the process guy. I've got a great co-founder. He's the process guy. He loves process and just loves implementing and improving, and that's just in his nature. And I let him handle most of that in the business because I know that that's his passion, and he just loves improving things. And he's the powerhouse behind how we evolve, especially in a number of areas and key areas in the business. I find that quite fascinating in terms of what he does. But step by step, you need a process. Otherwise, you can't do. We're up to close to 200 episodes recording, and I don't think we would ever be able to do that without the process. If we were manually editing the podcast ourselves, creating the clips, communicating with you after the episode, it just wouldn't be consistent. And I think we get consistency because of processes and the power of leverage. And then we can say, I spend 45 minutes an hour with you, and the impact of that is 10 times that value because we have a process in place. So I think we all need to think about how do we get consistency in business. It's easy to be a fly in the pan and do something for 3-5 episodes, in this case for the podcast. But the reality is it's difficult to do something 200 times over if we don't have a process. It's near on impossible to stay consistent.
Yeah, and creatives and sort of mavericks don't want to be hemmed in by systems and processes. That kind of get that. And there's also business owners that don't want to let go of, that this is how I do it, and I'm the only one who can do that. But the reality is, if it's just you're doing 60, 70 hours a week, you're not working on your highest leverage. And so I have an interest in theories that one of the reasons I believe that US businesses grow faster than Australian ones is that they invest in two things. So many funded US companies invest in an EA, someone to just take care of the minutiae, to allow them to, next sales meetings, to strategy, to new product development. And the second one is so many more US businesses have coaches and Australians don't. And so that lack of investment, because even a coach allows you to, or a mentor, a paid one, allows you to see things you haven't seen before, to get a fresh perspective, all those other things. Like I said earlier, you've got two choices. If you don't have much money, you can just read a book, $15 in 4-6 hours. But if you've got quite a bit of money, you can invest in a mentor that goes, here's how I did that, and here's the roadmap for that. And you go, that would have taken me 6-12 months to think about, to implement.
Sometimes years.
Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes
and
years.
So that's where I believe that Australian businesses are lacking. They're lacking paid EAs to take the founders out of the minutiae as quickly as possible and build the processes that someone else does exactly that. And they're not paying enough for mentors and coaches to allow them to come up with fresh ideas, fresh perspective, and really sort of challenge their thinking.
And to add a little bit about coaches and mentors, you just touch on their challenge their thinking. I feel that a great coach will impact your belief system more than anything, which will catapult your business forward and you forward personally. Because sometimes, and I think you mentioned it earlier in the episode, where you get stuck in a belief system or a limiting belief. You mentioned that specifically. When you're around and associated with a coach that thinks completely differently to you, it will challenge your belief system and it will impact those limiting beliefs. And sometimes it's not the process that is what's going to get us to the next step, and most of the time it isn't. It's mostly the psychology and how we think. That's my biggest learning, and I want to say a big thank you, because at a time when we were struggling as a business, we had some challenges. You threw your hand up and introduced me to what I would say is one of the most impactful mentors I've ever met, who's impacted that belief system of mine. and shifted the way we think in our business considerably. And I don't think we would have ever got to the next step. And I think there's a step in business, and sometimes we hit walls and we don't know where to go. And I think we hit a wall and we don't know where to go. So I want to say thank you for introducing us to probably the most polarising mentor I've ever met, who's challenged me, and I'll put his name's Shane Taylor, I'll just put him on record, who's really impacted our business and me specifically, and he's continuously just stood in his own 2 feet and just said, this is the way I do things, this is the way I think, and he shared a number of stories over the journey as to how he's built his belief system and what's impacted. And it's taken me a long time to really understand him, and understand the way he thinks and strategizes, but he just distills things down to simple, structured, common sense practices. But in our belief system or in the way we do things, sometimes that doesn't resonate. So that's my biggest learning of what a coach can do. I think sometimes not just the process or just do this. If we don't believe that's going to work, then we're not going to put 100% into it either. So that's my sort of takeaway of what. Thank you for the introduction to Shane.
You're welcome. But I mean, it's almost impossible to change your own belief systems, because that's how you grew up, what you've experienced in the world. And so everyone understands that limiting beliefs and we should be changing our thinking, and yet they think they can do it themselves. And that goes back to what I said is, for about 7 years in business, my business grew very fast. I was doing 300 events a year across Australia, but I hadn't paid for a single coach, hadn't paid for any kind of additional learning. And then that's when I realized I was playing small and my thinking was quite small. I needed to change. And that put me on that path of, okay, I don't want to be the person that spends 50 hours a week in a business and has learnt nothing and is just doing the same thing again and again. Or you get suckered into looking to the shortcut gurus out there that are just out to make a fast buck and don't really they've got one little idea that they're sprouting to everybody. It's, as I said, the 7 secrets, the simple, blah, blah, blah. If business was that simple, we'd all be doing it very, very successfully. And, as you vulnerably shared, you went through that stage where it was really tough for you. And so that ability to tap into a network, to have that fresh perspective, to get outside your comfort zone and put your hand up and say, I don't have all the answers. I need some help. Who out here is a good fit for me?
Sometimes it's, as business owners, we get sort of stuck in our own little world and we feel like there's no light at the end of the tunnel, and it will happen. We all go through these phases in business. There's always good times and challenging times, and things get thrown at you that you didn't expect, or you've made a mistake and you've put all you've wholeheartedly you put your hand up and shit, I did something that I didn't realise was a problem. And I've done these things in all of my business journey, and you sort of reflect and you beat yourself up. But the reality is, when you speak to even successful people in business, success might be the size of business or how you treat success. It's totally up to you. Maybe it's the lifestyle they've created. Wholeheartedly, when you speak to these people, everyone's had these challenges or been through them. So speak up a little bit more. That's what I'd say. I always kept it in, and I've learned to let go a little bit, because the reality is we all go through these things in business, and as people and humans, nothing's perfect. If it never will be, and we always just will learn, evolve, and we will make mistakes, and that's okay. But sometimes we need to, like I said, get a mentor, get some support, and challenge those belief systems. That's what I feel like a mentor and a coach does the most. Yeah, it's the belief systems. Yeah.
And for me as well, kind of what I've learned over the last 20 years is you've got to find leverage points. It's lonely in business. It's difficult. It's long hours. You talked back earlier, why would you invest your life savings? So you have to find an upside. You have to find a way to ensure that you create great leverage. And it's one of the reasons we've kind of started intelligent resourcing, is that helping business owners understand there's a different way to do things. And that's a combination of technology and people, that you can create great leverage. You can sort of free yourself from the minutiae. You can find new ways of growing, inexpensively. The solutions are already out there. You just got to lean into them and find that leverage for you that allows you to grow a business sustainably, successfully, and also, get paid for what you're worth and all the time and effort you put into that.
So if anyone wants to learn about intelligent resourcing, how do they find you, Ronan? Let's share a little bit about you, how they can get in contact.
Sure. The website's intelligentresourcing.co, and there's a case study on there. There's also the salary guide of how much it costs to hire someone in the Philippines. There is no drop in your email address. I'm a firm believer that people are over these kind of lead magnets. They put in a bogus email address or one they never use. They're scared of being then spammed afterwards. Just download the salary guide or the case study, and if you're interested, reach out. If not, there's no email address, so I won't be sending you 20 emails telling you the shopping cart's closing.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you, Ronan. Thanks for joining us today. It's been a fascinating conversation and a bit of a learning period for me, and a good sharing and reflection period as well. So really appreciate you coming on the DevReady podcast, and I'm sure some listeners will get a lot out of this, and hopefully they've learnt one or two things they can take from this podcast and implement in their business or drive into their new venture. So thank you for joining us.
Great. Thanks for hosting me, Andrew.